if you're a small business owner, or if you are thinking of starting a small business and you want to build your brand, build your business online, then I would suggest that you consider whether starting a podcast is right for your business or not. It may be right, it may not be right, but if it is right, if it's right for the particular area of activity you're engaging in, then a podcast could be very, very effective. There is indications there recently that I've noticed. I have a podcast, by the way, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But there are indications I've noticed in the last 6 months or so, 3 months, from two of the big beasts in the online or digital space, Apple and YouTube. Firstly, YouTube was owned by Google, and YouTube in the last few months has committed or gone into podcasting in a big way, and I've submitted my podcast, the Irish Law and Small Business Podcast, to YouTube Podcasts, and I'm getting great results from it. And I think one of the reasons for that is because I think YouTube and Google, by extension, are pushing podcasts, are making it an attractive proposition, because I think they recognize that podcasts are an area of growth in the coming years. They've grown massively in the last few years, but they look like continuing to grow. And we all know in Ireland the popularity of certain podcasts and so on. So that is Google and that is YouTube. The second big beast in the jungle in terms of giving a vote of confidence to podcasting is Apple. Apple have recently on their iTunes platform, and iTunes is a popular platform for podcasts and podcasters, but I want to just turn off this radio. I got a notification there recently that Apple are now doing captions, generally, or auto-generating captions for podcast episodes on their iTunes platform. So that's a big vote of confidence in podcasting as well. My podcast is called the Irish Law and Small Business Podcast. I submitted it recently to YouTube Podcasts, and as I said already, I'm getting great results from that. I'm getting a lot of new subscribers and getting a lot of new listeners. So in addition to my videos on YouTube, my video podcast on Spotify, I have an audio podcast then back on YouTube. When YouTube pulls in the RSS feed from Spotify, my podcast is audio. So in addition to the videos on YouTube, I have an audio only podcast, which is precisely the same material except there's no video. But the huge advantage of this particular podcast, audio podcast only, is that people who are, for example, exercising or going to the gym or walking their dog or driving their car, they can't watch videos, but they can listen. They can consume it when they're out running or walking or jogging or cycling or walking the dog or going to the gym. They can't watch videos, driving the car. They can't watch videos, but they can listen to the podcast. They can listen to audio. So by submitting my podcast, the Irish Law and Small Business Podcast, to YouTube, I'm getting a whole new audience. The podcast in its original format is in Spotify, but Spotify then, the RSS feed from Spotify is distributed to iTunes, and so you have the podcast on iTunes, and then to YouTube as well for the audio podcast only, and then to other platforms. But I only make a video once, and I put it up on YouTube first, and then I submit the video to Spotify as part of my podcast, my video cast. And so if you have time to watch videos and so on, you can consume my podcast or my video cast on Spotify. But in terms of starting a podcast, it's very, very easy to start a podcast. And to start one, you could actually do it with this, with a mobile phone, smartphone. So all you have to do is make an audio recording or a video recording and start your podcast on the likes of Spotify. And Spotify's podcasting platform is called Anchor. It used to be Anchor Radio. It's Anchor.fm or something now, or I don't know what it is exactly. Look it up online, you'll find it. But Spotify's podcasting arm is Anchor, and Spotify are a very, very progressive company. We all know, we all use Spotify now for music consumption and so on. But their podcast arm has really upped its game in the last few months, last 12 months or so. And as a consequence of that, there's fantastic features for podcasters. So if you create a podcast, you're going to get great mileage, in my view, out of Spotify if you have a half decent one. You're going to be able to distribute it also without any effort to iTunes. You're going to be able to distribute it to YouTube as well, and you have a YouTube podcast then. And if you are making videos, then you've got your YouTube channel or whatever. But just to start your podcast in the first instance, if you're doing audio only, you can use your mobile phone and the free platform offered by Spotify. And as I said, two great reasons to consider podcasting as a viable method of a tool in your marketing arsenal. If you're a small business owner, two big signals, as I say, are coming from Apple and YouTube in the last month or so, 2 months. So I hope you find this video useful. If you do, I'd appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up down below. And there's one other thing I forgot to say. I've built my business essentially and built my brand online since I first qualified as a solicitor. And I've been doing this sort of thing since 2009 or thereabouts. I've written a book, How to Grow Your Business and Brand Online, and that book is available on Amazon. So if you're interested, you can access the Kindle version or the paperback version or the audio version, but it sets out the strategy, the content marketing strategy that I've employed since 2009. This is 2024. My strategy hasn't changed all that much, except I have focused and doubled down in the last probably 2 years or so on video. But the content marketing strategy that I set out in that book, which, as I say, is available on Amazon, sets out my strategy precisely, and the one I'm using today, and the one that's allowed me to build my solicitor's practice and allowed me to build my brand. Hope you find this video useful. If you do, I'd appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below. And you may be interested in listening to my podcast. It's the Irish Law and Small Business Podcast. You can access it on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or anywhere you might listen to podcasts and access them. Thanks a lot.